Evolution has a way of surprising us over and over again. Just when we start to think we've figured out how life works, science throws a curveball that changes everything we thought we knew. From body parts we thought were useless turning out to be essential, to discovering that some of our most embarrassing reactions may be attributed to ancient survival tools, evolution is full of so many plot twists, it would make horror scriptwriters jealous. I'm Mike with List 25, and here are 25 fascinating facts about evolution of life on Earth that'll make you see the world in a completely different light. But before we begin, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, notification bell so you don't miss anything. Truly helps us. I mean it. It really does. Thank you guys so much. With that being said, let's go. 25. The appendix. Doctors and scientists have treated the appendix like it's nature's biggest mistake. A useless little leftover from our evolutionary past, if you will. It's just sitting there, waiting to get infected and obliterate your weekend plans. Except, science might just owe the appendix an apology. As it turns out, across different animal species, this supposedly pointless little tube has undergone at least 29 separate evolutionary changes. That seems like a lot for something useless, right? But more than that, there's proof that evolution has gotten rid of the appendix around 12 times, but it's always brought it back. Ultimately, it's not so useless after all. Research suggests it has a role in our immune system. It acts like a house for beneficial gut bacteria and helps repopulate your digestive system after an illness. Thanks, appendix. 24. Bats, dolphins, and echolocation. Do you know what dolphins and bats have in common? Well, if you heard the title of this one, then you know they both use echolocation. Dolphins use it to navigate the dark, murky waters of the ocean, and bats use it to hunt in the dark. Using their ears as their eyes is a cool party trick, but there's something even more awe-inspiring about this scientific marvel. Not only do they both use echolocation, but they've evolved nearly identical genetic changes to make it possible. This all comes down to a protein called prestin. It's critical for the supersensitive hair cells in the inner ears. These hairs act like tiny muscles in the outer hair cells and become much like a phonograph horn by amplifying sound waves. While bats and dolphins are nowhere near the same creature, they've somehow ended up with remarkably similar genetic tweaks from the same protein. And as far as we know, this didn't come from some ancient echolocating ancestor either. These creatures had to figure it out independently. Not only did nature develop this amazing solution right down to the molecular level once, but twice, in two extremely different species. 23. Early native peoples adapted to high altitudes differently. Any mountaineer will tell you that hanging out at the top of mountains isn't for the weak. The air is thin, there's less oxygen to breathe, and most people end up feeling faint. For the average person, it is a struggle. However, there are two groups of humans who have mastered the art of living up high, but they solve the problem in two very different ways. First, let's talk about the folks who live in the Andes Mountains in South America. These people have been thriving 10,000 feet above sea level for generations. How is this possible? Well, evolution, of course. They've developed bigger chests, stronger hearts, and larger lungs. And they've even produced more blood cells than the rest of us. Those red blood cells do have a downside, though. Some Andeans develop chronic mountain sickness because of them. For our second group, we're heading to Tibet. As weird as it sounds, their bodies did the exact opposite of the Andeans. Instead of producing more red blood cells, their bodies changed to make oxygen more efficient thanks to a genetic variant that makes their blood work smarter, not harder. This EPAS1 variant comes from an ancient human species that went extinct tens of thousands of years ago, the Denisovans. They may be gone, but their DNA still lives in modern Tibetans. 22. The silent owl. Unlike most birds, when owls fly, they don't make noise. There's no whooshing of air under their wings or any flapping sounds. They're basically flying ghosts who can swoop down on their prey without making a single noise. And the way this happens is brilliant. It has to do with their feathers. While other bird feathers have smooth leading edges, owl feathers are like microscopic combs that break up the turbulence that's attributed to the flight sounds. On top of that, the trailing edges of their feathers are fringed and soft, which also helps to muffle any noise. Those adaptations, paired with their velvety body, help absorb any sounds that would typically echo instead. This is such a unique avian biology that engineers study owl feathers to try to design quieter airplane wings and wind turbine blades. 21. Coffee, tea, and caffeine. Coffee and tea are the two most popular ways nearly every adult starts their day. I mean, who doesn't love a nice little caffeine boost in the morning? What's kind of weird, though, is how the plants manage to create a nearly identical molecule that makes the production of caffeine possible. This is a great example of convergent evolution. The tea plant belongs to the Theaceae family, whereas coffee plants are part of the Rubiaceae family. They're about as closely related as a sea cucumber in humans. Somehow, though, they managed to evolve to produce caffeine through entirely different genetic pathways using different enzymes. Both plants start this process with the same basic compound called xanthocene, and they both put it through 3 methylation steps to create caffeine. That's where the similarities end. Coffee plants use enzymes called xanthine methyltransferases, and tea uses caffeine synthesis. Different recipes, same results. Why did they both start producing caffeine in the first place? Well, it wasn't for our benefit. Caffeine is actually a natural pesticide, so they were truly just doing it to protect themselves. Who knew their natural defense system would make them huge targets for humans? 20. Lactose tolerance. Can you drink milk without feeling sick? Yeah, me too. I used to drink about a gallon a day. And that actually makes us evolutionary oddballs. The ability to drink it, not the gallon a day thing. Today, only about 1/3 of the world's population can tolerate lactose after being weaned from their mother. And even for that 1/3, it wasn't always that way. It wasn't until around 10,000 years ago that humans developed the ability for adults to produce lactase, the enzyme that breaks down milk sugar. This trait is called lactase persistence, and shockingly, it spread like wildfire through certain populations, giving them a serious survival advantage. The timing of this evolution was not a coincidence. It happened around the same time that humans began domesticating cattle and livestock. This gave them a reliable source of protein and calories needed for their survival. Even in the harshest of environments, being able to digest milk was a matter of life or death. What makes this even more fascinating is that different populations around the world developed the ability to tolerate lactose in very different ways. Europeans, for instance, developed a mutation in the regulatory region that controls the lactase gene. On the other hand, African pastoral populations evolved several variants. Wild, right? Today, your ability to handle a glass of milk depends on what your ancestors did for a living thousands of years ago. If they were herders in East Africa or Northern Europe, you've probably hit the lactose lottery. If not, you're still operating on the original mammalian software. 19. Epicanthic Fold. Have you ever wondered why people of different ethnicities have different eye shapes? And no, it's not just for aesthetics. It has to do with the epicanthic fold. This extra layer of skin is over the eye's inner corner. It's a case of evolutionary engineering that helped our ancestors survive harsh environments. While this trait is most common for folks of East Asian descent, it's also common in some indigenous populations and even Northern Europeans. In these areas, our ancestors lived in blinding snow and bitter winds. People from these regions even developed extra fat padding around their eyes for insulation against the frigid temperatures. Scientists believe this evolution began in Asia during the Ice Age and became a key survival tool. Now, thousands upon thousands of years later, the epicanthic fold still provides those same practical benefits, like helping with sun exposure and glare, even though we don't face the same life and death pressure from the environment. 18. Cesarean births. Leave it to science to force evolution. One prime example of that is how we come into the world. Back in the day, if you were giving birth and things went sideways, there were no doctors or surgeries that could save you. Now, though, they can whisk you off into the OR and help get that baby out of you. I'm talking, of course, about cesarean births, or C-sections. Since the beginning of human history, women with narrow hips, or babies who were just too big, didn't make it through childbirth. It was a cruel case of natural selection that left families completely devastated. Thankfully, C-sections stepped in when evolution couldn't. Would it be easier for women to have wider hips and smaller infants? Sure, but where's the fun in that when science has a solution? Cesareans became commonplace in the 60s, and it wasn't a moment too soon. Childbirth is a dangerous game and always has been. The strain on the woman's body and the infant is natural, sure, but also traumatic. Add in complications, and things can go from bad to worse on a dime. In fact, scientists believe C-sections will become even more common due to the lack of human evolution that's keeping narrow-hipped women from having babies much too big to fit through their birth canals. Science removed an evolutionary barrier for childbirth and has helped women all over the globe bring their babies into the world. 17. Humans are the sweatiest primates. Have you ever taken your dog on a long walk on a hot day and wondered why you're a sweaty mess and they're not? Well, you can thank evolution for that. Humans have between 2 and 5 million sweat glands all over our bodies. That's way more than even our closest living relatives like gorillas and chimpanzees. They only have about 1/10 of the sweat gland density, and, like your dog, mostly pant when they get hot. Those pit stains? Well, that's a gift that comes entirely from our early ancestors who were hunters in the scorching African savannas. Humans aren't exactly the fastest sprinters, so our bodies had to develop a different hunting strategy. Sweat to the rescue. While most of our prey at the time were definitely quicker on their feet, their lack of sweat glands meant they need a rest after a while. Humans, though, we just used our sweat as a superpower. It gave us the ability to wait out prey while keeping ourselves cool. Once the animal lay down to rest, we could get our shot and our dinner. So the next time you're dripping sweat after a workout, remember, you can thank evolution for that. 16. The smell of air after a storm. One of the greatest scents on Earth is that incredible smell after rain hits the ground. That fresh, earthy aroma, called petrichor, exists because of evolution. The scent comes from a compound produced by soil bacteria called Geosmin and plant oils that accumulate during dry spells. When raindrops hit the ground, they create teeny tiny aerosols that launch geosmin into the air and give the atmosphere that much-loved smell. The drier the soil, the stronger the odor. Humans are particularly sensitive to geosmin. In fact, we can detect it at just a few parts per trillion. Scientists believe our hypersensitive noses helped our ancestors find fresh water sources. All they had to do was track the smell of rain, which helped lead them to puddles, ponds, and lakes. The next time you're playing in the rain and catch a whiff of rain hitting the ground, remember, you're using an ancient survival tool that helped keep humans alive for thousands upon thousands of years. 15. The human eye. I've already talked about how the shape of our eyes is part of evolution, but did you realize that the way our eyes function is also a product of evolution? The sclera, the white part, is unusually large and bright in humans compared to other mammals. In most animals, the sclerae are dark and small, which can make it sometimes near impossible to tell exactly what they're looking at. For us, though, this is all part of the design to help us use our eyes to communicate better. It basically gives us built-in pointing devices right there on our faces. It's thought that the design of our eyes evolved because our ancestors needed a way to communicate efficiently and silently while hunting. We could simply shift our eyes and signal that danger was coming without turning our heads or making a sound. Scientists call this idea the cooperative eye hypothesis. They believe our eyes adapted this way to specifically make us better at working together. We can even see this in babies who follow the eye movements of their mothers. The next time someone gives you the look, remember, it took millions of years of evolution to make that look possible. 14. Evolutionary approaches to depression. A study from 2009 suggests that depression may be an evolutionary paradox that had a surprising survival advantage. This line of thinking comes from the theory called the infection defense hypothesis. The idea that fatigue and low motivation causes a tendency to pull away from social contact may have helped our ancestors avoid catching and spreading diseases. Back before medicine created antibiotics and vaccines, even the smallest of infections could turn deadly fast. Being withdrawn could help stop the spread of the illness and even help humans fight off pathogens by staying still and not expending unnecessary energy. While this theory isn't anything more than a hypothesis at this point, you have to wonder if depressive symptoms may have existed way back then to conserve resources and redirect them towards immune responses. If that's true, depression could be a lingering ancient evolutionary survival strategy. 13. Exposure to platinum can devolve snails. Back in 2010, University of Tübingen researchers were studying how heavy metals, specifically platinum, affect embryo development in snails. And the end result was the discovery of how the snails may have evolved into slugs in the first place. What they wanted was to see how toxic platinum was to the freshwater snail babies. What they found was that platinum wasn't just toxic to snails, it completely messed up their shell protection and caused the shells to develop inside the body instead of outside. It turned them into tiny slug-like creatures right in front of their eyes. This led to the discovery of one of the pathways evolution may have naturally taken. Heavy metals in the ancient environments could have disrupted shell formation in the exact same way, leading to some snail lineages to become slugs instead. As it turns out, the difference between a slug and a snail isn't just whether or not it has a shell, but it could come down to the water they're born in. 12. The walking, climbing cavefish. The blind cavefish has been caught gliding along cave floors and even climbing up waterfalls using its body in a way no other fish can. This little guy has a special gait that uses an evolved pelvic girdle that land animals use to support their weight and walk. Obviously, our fin friends aren't supposed to be built like this, and it's a scientific marvel that has researchers enthralled. Just the fact that this fish is walking around dark caves independently is enough to have researchers locked in. It makes the transition from water to land even more achievable than we once thought at this point in history. Evolution turned this fish into a strolling sea creature, and we can't wait to see what twists in Mother Nature it comes up with next. 11. The curse of the Celts. People all over the world suffer from skin issues. From acne to psoriasis to hives, nearly everybody has dealt with an issue. For people of Northern European descent, rosacea may be driving you up the wall. But why is this curse of the Celts something that mainly affects fair-skinned folks? Well, you can thank evolution for that too. Rosacea shows up in people who live in cloudy climates more than others because they have more visible blood vessels. Researchers believe this was caused by a gene mutation that would allow Europeans who lived in cloudy environments to absorb vitamin D better in a place where the clouds block the sun more often than not. The trade-off for that is a genetic change that also made the facial blood vessels more sensitive to triggers like heat, stress, the sun, and even alcohol. Hence, the rosacea. If you're a person whose face turns red when you drink wine, you can blame it on rosacea and evolution. 10. The blonde-haired, dark-skinned people of the Solomon Islands. Head to the Solomon Islands and you'll find a population that has a unique trait. About 5 to 10% of the people there are born with dark skin, but naturally blonde hair. Most would assume this was due to some European ancestry somewhere in the family tree, but it's not. It's because of a completely unique local gene mutation that affects the TYRP1 gene that controls the production of melanin. With this change, the gene reduces the dark pigment in the hair, but not in the skin. What's strange is that this mutation arose independently in the Solomon Islands. It seemed to happen through their very own evolutionary process and is a great example of convergent evolution in humans. Solomon Islanders get their blonde locks through an entirely different genetic route than their European counterparts. 9. The avocado evolved to appeal to extinct megafauna. Do you love avocado toast? Well, you can thank dinosaurs and evolution for keeping them around. The fruit is a prime example of evolutionary anachronism. This plant evolved for a world that no longer exists. Scientists believe that during the Pleistocene era, America was home to megafauna like woolly mammoths and giant ground sloths. These creatures were big enough to eat avocados whole and then deposit the seed where it took its next pit stop. While these animals went extinct tens of thousands of years ago, avocados survived and became evolutionary orphans. The people of Mesoamerica began cultivating them thousands of years ago, and they're still going strong, including a jingle that I can never get out of my head. Avocados from Mexico. And now it's in your head. You're welcome. Thanks, Megafauna. 8. Old and New World Vultures. Did you know what we call vultures are actually two kinds of birds that just so happen to look and act alike? New World vultures are the ones we know and love in America, and are more closely related to storks than to any other vulture. Meanwhile, in Africa, Europe, and Asia, they have Old World vultures, which are related to hawks and eagles. Two different families, but both have bald heads, huge wings, and iron stomachs that can handle eating just about anything, including rotten meat, without getting sick. Wild, right? What else sets these avian fellows apart is that Old World vultures rely on their sharp eyesight to spot carcasses, but New World search for the dead using their extraordinary sense of smell. While they are both scavengers, they don't look for their meal in the same way at all. This is another case of convergent evolution. Two very different birds, but very similar ecological mannerisms. 7. Rye and oats used to be considered weeds. Did you know some of our most important crops actually started out as annoying weeds? Or at least that's what farmers used to believe rye and oats were. During the early years of agriculture, wheat and barley were the main grains, and farmers kept removing oats and rye, believing that they were nothing but weeds. That is, until humans began to notice these plants weren't actually garbage after all. Oats thrive in cool, wet environments, which aren't exactly ideal conditions for most other grains. Rye turned out to be tough enough to handle the cooler climates too, and it thrived even in poor soil. This discovery turned out to be a game changer. More food, more full bellies, fewer starvation deaths. And they weren't just edible to humans, but for livestock as well. It was a win. This is just one more way that the evolution of cultivating plants has changed our world for the better. 6. Narrow nostrils. People from cold, dry regions usually have narrower nostrils. This works like a built-in heating system. Your nose takes that cold air and warms and moisturizes it so it doesn't become a shock to your lungs. It prevents damage from breathing in the cold, dry air. On the flip side, people with wider nostrils allow for better airflow, which helps to keep your body cool and prevent you from overheating in the hot sun. This anatomy-shaping natural selection works in the same way our skin color has evolved. Just as the way the amount of melanin you produce has a direct tie to where your ancestors came from, your nostrils work the same way. Our bodies have been fine-tuned over thousands of years to make sure they work the best way they can in the environments our ancestors lived in. 5. Why do sperm whales only have one blowhole? So, sperm whales only have one blowhole instead of two like many other whales. And what's more, that blowhole evolved from what used to be their left nostril. Their distant land-dwelling ancestors had two nostrils at the front of their snouts like other mammals. But as whales adapted to life in the ocean, those nostrils began to migrate towards the top of their head for more efficient breathing at the surface of the ocean. In toothed whales, like the sperm whale, the right nostril became reduced and became non-functioning, while the left enlarged and developed into a blowhole. As for baleen whales, they have both nostrils, and therefore two blowholes. In addition, this single blowhole connects to a specialized internal structure to aid in their echolocation system. It creates a spermaceti organ and works to produce and focus sonar clicks. This shows how evolution can take the same starting point in very similar beings and turn it into something completely unique. 4. Why are chili peppers spicy? Chili peppers haven't always been spicy. They actually evolved to be that way as a defense mechanism. They progressed to develop capsaicin, the chemical that creates the face-burning sensation many of us know and love. This acted as a detriment for many mammals and stopped them from reaching for the peppers. What's really interesting is birds don't have those pain receptors and are the perfect partner for this plant's ongoing existence. They can munch down without being affected by the spice, and since they don't crush seeds while eating, they were able to disperse them to help new plants grow. It's a perfect distribution system. The next time you reach for hot sauce or a super spicy pepper, know that this plant evolved to hurt you. Maybe it should have evolved to be less delicious. 3. Greenland sharks. Toxic, half-blind giants of the ocean. Greenland sharks are among the longest living vertebrates on Earth. I mean, they can live over 400 years. And they spend much of that lifetime being effectively blinded by parasites that attach to their eyes and grow up to 3 centimeters long, right on their corneas. Fun. What's really interesting is some researchers believe those parasites to be bioluminescent, which in theory would help to attract their prey. While not proven, it does add another layer to the struggle of the Greenland shark. Do they let this stop them or slow them down though? Absolutely not. These sharks live in the dark Arctic waters, where eyesight isn't a key component to survival. They rely strongly on their other senses, like their highly evolved sense of smell and electroreception, to remain one of the apex predators of the ocean. They're not going to let a little thing like being half blind stop them from snatching up their prey. This is just another example of nature taking what could become a weakness and transitioning to develop other strengths to stay at the top of the food chain. 2. Play dead. Have you ever fainted at the sight of blood? As it turns out, it may not just be because blood makes you queasy. It might actually be an ancient survival mechanism that evolved as a form of playing dead when faced with a dangerous threat. Scientists believe this phenomenon, called tonic immobility, developed as a last-ditch effort to evade predators and attackers. If you can't escape, make them think you're dead so they'll lose interest and back off. And this isn't unique to humans. Animals like opossums and sharks are famous for doing this as well. They'll see blood, most often their own, and like people, they'll experience a drop in heart rate, their breathing will slow down, and they'll go completely still and appear lifeless. Most hunters fall for this act and eventually go off to find new prey. It's dramatic, but it works. Today, of course, passing out could very well mean you need medical attention, so do not rely on this video about evolution to give you a free pass to not head to the hospital. 1. Why do we find bitter taste unpleasant? You know when you bite into something super bitter and it takes you a second or two to get used to it and stop making, that face? That's more of a sour face, but you know what I mean. That reaction is hardwired by millions of years of evolution. Plants develop nasty tasting chemicals like alkaloids to stop animals from eating them. These compounds can even make them, and us, sick and even be fatal. Our ancestors evolved to detect those chemicals by our taste buds reacting to them and making them taste bitter. We have about 25 different bitter receptors in our mouths thanks to developments in the TAS2R genes. One bite, and we know if something wasn't okay to put in our mouths and we'd spit it out. Like Nintendo Switch cartridges. This gave us an edge over animals that would keep chewing. It's not a completely flawless system though. Like everything else, evolution isn't perfect. Our mouths treat some truly healthy things like kale and dark chocolate as suspicious, even though they are, in fact, good for us. Making this even more flawed is that not everyone reacts to the same things these days. Some of us can pound back a bowl of Brussels sprouts or two and go back for more while our friends look on in horror. Fun. And there you have it. 25 fascinating facts about the evolution of life on Earth. Which one of these bizarre facts shocked you the most? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to dive deeper into the strange ways of the Earth, you should check out our video 25 country facts that'll completely change how you see the world. I'll link it in the description box, and it should pop up somewhere near here soon. And now, for the best part of every video, trivia time. Let's see who can answer this question without Google. Which ancient creature is thought to be the first animal to develop eyes? A. Trilobites, B. Jellyfish, C. Euglena, or D. Anomalocaris? Thanks for watching. But before you go, make sure, like I said, like, share, comment, subscribe, notification bell, do all that fun stuff, and I'll catch you next time. See ya.